This right here is my, well, it's the household. He's a albino banana ball python. Yeah, he's probably, I say, a year and a half, almost 2 years old. Um, Early age, I've always had a thing for reptiles, but with addiction, I could never, afford that. I could never get into it. Now that I'm in recovery now, and I live the life that I can afford these things, I'm able to, create my passion when it comes to reptiles. Um, I do have a plan and project in the future of breeding him and with a female. Once I do obtain a female, because I have two other snakes that I plan on breeding as well. But when it comes to, snakes, people think that, they're mean creatures. They're terrible. But, they're just misunderstood. Uh, they have, feelings like a dog or, a cat. Anybody, I could sit here and anybody be scared of him. But, I could sit here just moving around like this and he's not going to do nothing. He don't care. He's super comfortable. You know, I would probably put his temperament as something like, a puppy dog. Well, my name is Richard Trey Wilkerson. I'm from small town, Springfield, Tennessee. My childhood was not the greatest, but it was not the worst. In my hands, in my eyes, I see, I kind of had it good. I did live with my grandmother because my mother, she could not afford to take care of two young boys. My father was in prison. He was incarcerated until I was about 8 years old. Uh, I never wanted as a child. Always got what I wanted. Uh, but I didn't have the best of the best. But as a kid, we never see the materialistics of things. We always, we're appreciative of what we got. Uh, as I got older, things started to change for me. Once I became an adolescent or a teenager, uh, I started getting involved with, the wrong group of crowds. I started smoking cigarettes, drinking, smoking weed, popping pain pills around the age of 12 years old. I'm now 29 years old. That's 17 years lost in addiction. It's a pretty long time when you look at it. And it's parts of my life so I'll never get back. That my brain never fully developed during that. I did have a really creative mindset on how I would make money and how I'd get money. I was a huge thief when it came to trying to support my habit. I did what I had to do to get high. I didn't care who I hurt, whose feelings I hurt, or anything like that. Uh, at the age of 15, I tried my first hardcore drug. I started using cocaine and crack, and that was a very uh, bad decision for me. That's when everything started to go downhill. Um, at the age of 18, I had, plans to join the military, doing things the right way, but that's one thing I could not defeat was my addiction. I could not get that off my back, so that turned me into the person that I did not want to be. I went down a dark path. I caught a charge when I was 18 years old. It was a little petty charge, a little petty theft charge, but I did that to afford my addiction. I was on the run from the police for 6 years, and you know, I always sat there and wondered why my life was so chaotic at times when there were things not going my way, and I never once, when I was a teenager or a young adult, believed in God. I've never had that spiritual connection, and I always blamed God. If there was a God, I always blamed Him. The way my life was living was because of Him, but in all reality, it's because of me. I started using heroin and fentanyl at the age of 21 years old. That's when things got really heavy for me. I fell into a deep, dark depression because of the drugs. They are really, really, really bad. And it took forever for me to, figure out what my main cause was. Years going down the road, I'd switch back and forth. There was really no drug of choice for me. Even though opiates was my main drug of choice, I'd switch back and forth between anything. If it had any mind-altering substance I could use that's going to make me feel better, I'm using it. At the age of 24, I moved back home to Tennessee,
and I stayed with my parents, my dad, and we had a really good, close relationship for a while. I had a good job. I was building conveyors, and I was working out of state, and that's. I thought my life was going to change, but the more money you make, the worse your problems get. I spiraled back out into my really bad drug use. Started my mental health went totally downhill. Uh, I never thought my life would be unmanageable because as a drug addict, we always think that we could successfully use a drug and still live our life and be successful, and that's never the case. It may seem like it's going good for us, but it's never going to be a happy ending. I was 24 when I started going to jail. Ended up getting caught up because, like I stated before, I was stealing, and I was incarcerated. When I was incarcerated, my grandmother ended up passing away, and when I first went to jail, I thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is what I need. I need jail to make me sober up. That was never the case. My 3 days I was in jail, I received a phone call that my grandmother passed away from cancer, and that tore me apart. She was my everything, and uh, when I got out of jail, it was a green light for me. I just, I needed to cure these thoughts. I needed to make myself feel better, so I started getting high again. I violated my probation because they released me on probation, and I thought I can't go back to jail, so let's go on the run. So I went on the run, and then eventually my life, it's where everything went downhill. I became homeless. I've lost every single thing I had. All I had was the backpack I had with 4 or 5 pair of clothes in it, and that's not the way to live as a young adult. So I decided, let's go to treatment. So I went to treatment. My first time going to treatment, I thought, this would be the best thing for me. So I went to treatment for 90 days. I got out and I went to a sober living house. Once I went to that sober living house, thought maybe things were going good for me. I did accomplish 9 months of sobriety during that time. Well, after, life started being a little chaotic for me, and I couldn't control anything. I was starting to use gas station drugs, and that's just as worse as anything else because those were drugs I could pass on a drug test. So I started using those, and things really got out of hand. And not long after that, I ended up back on heroin. I faced a really bad overdose in 2021 or 22. I really thought that was the end for me. I was in a coma for 2 days, and that's when I actually thought I was gonna die. But by God's glory, I'm still here. After I got out of treatment that time, it never struck to me that God had me here for a reason. I went back out there and started doing the same thing that I was doing because I was comfortable with that. And that was the worst thing I've ever could have done. I ended up homeless again, still using drugs, and I went to treatment again probably a year after that. And that was, I used rehab my first 2 times as a escape. I needed a place to stay. I need food to eat. And that's what I used that for. And I also used a crutch, medication called Suboxone as a crutch to, make me feel better, put me in better moods. And there were times where, it got me high, and I would use that as an advantage. After, I got out of rehab that time, life was still the same for me. I was still homeless. I was still bouncing around from couch to couch. I still had a drug problem. I went from Suboxone back to using opiates. Nothing changed for me. I remember just like it was yesterday. One day I was, sitting at my brother's house, and I had a little bit of fentanyl, and my nieces were over there, and I did a little bit of fentanyl. Next thing I know, I'm overdosed on the front porch, beating on the doors, hollering, "Uncle Trey, are you okay?" I wasn't okay. I was dead. Luckily, my brother decided to turn around and save my life. And you think after that, you change your life. But oh, that's just where it started. Uh, I was using drugs really bad to the point to where they were suppressing and numbing every single thing in my life. You know, I absolutely loved the joy of drugs, but I didn't love what it brought me. I just loved the way it made me feel. Yeah, so when it was January 4th, I decided, enough is enough. I had a warrant out for my arrest in the county my brother was living in. And I decided, let's turn this around. Let's go to jail. Like, I'm tired of running. I ain't got nowhere to go. I decided, enough is enough. I'm tired of being homeless. Yes, I'm on drugs, but maybe, I've been to rehab 3 times. I've been to jail numerous of times. Maybe this last time will help me. So I went to jail, turned myself in. The worst thing I was fearing was I'm going to be dope sick. And by the grace of God's glory, I was not dope sick. I did that time, and, I had a lot of, personal time to myself to sit there and think, to wonder, why am I like this? Why have I been set here in life and I've only messed it up? I've spent my whole life away on drugs. After I got out of jail, I decided that, enough is enough. Let's fix my life up. Let's reconnect my relationships with my parents, my family. Let's do the right thing. So I started to do that, but I went back to the place my parents lived at. And, it's not the best place for me, but it's not the worst. But Tracy's worst enemy, I can make the worst out of any situation, even if it's the best. So I went back home, and I did good for a little while, but Trey destroyed himself. Trey decided, not get a job. Let's not work. Let's just do other things to afford our habits. Let's scheme and scam people. Let's break laws. Let's break in people's houses. Let's do what I'm used to, what I'm comfortable with. I did that for a long time. But at that time, I was not using any fentanyl or heroin. I got mixed up in meth real bad. And that was my go-to. About a year later, I decided, maybe enough is enough. So I was given the number to the next chapter here in Whitley City, Kentucky. And, I was sitting here thinking that, I was told that, hey, it's a faith-based church or rehab center. They help you go to church. They help you get your life together. They feed you. I was homeless, and I was hungry, and I was in addiction. And I was like, maybe this is where I need to go. But me, Trey, I'm a Satanist. I do not worship God. I worship myself. I am my own God. So I was to the understanding that they don't force this upon you. They accept everybody. I decided, let's give this place a try. I'm tired, cold, and I'm hungry. I need a bed to sleep in. I need food to eat. And I need a roof over my head. So I made that phone call. And they came and picked me up the very next day. It was a very, very hard 4-hour car drive. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to talk to nobody. And as soon as I came at the next chapter, first thing I was looking for was drugs. I was like, hey, can you get me some Suboxone? Can you get me this? Can you get me that? A couple hours later, I decided, man, no, I don't need Suboxone. I haven't done opiates in over about a year. I've just been on methamphetamines. And, if I start getting back on Suboxone, I'm going to get addicted again. And it's going to lead back to me doing fentanyl and heroin. And it's a non-ending cycle. And Trey was getting really tired of it. So I decided, maybe this is what I need. So I put my all into this program on getting better. It was not easy. There were days, weeks, and there was even a month, the whole month where I thought about leaving. I had a guy come up to me one day, and he seen, my body language, look in my face that, hey, you're about to leave. You're about to make the worst decision of your life. He said, hey, come outside with me. Let's walk some laps. And, I don't know if that was God sending him my way or if he just could really tell, but that guy saved my life. He's the reason why I stayed. And so I decided, let's really put 100% into this. Well, I'm sitting there one day. It was a Saturday morning. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm sitting down there. I went to go make me a cup of coffee, and it's a gloomy, rainy day. Mind you, I was a Satanist. I didn't worship God. Never picked the Bible up. And I had a good brother of mine, Jimmy. He's sitting over at the corner table reading the Bible. And I said, maybe this is it. I seen that light shining upon that Bible. I said, maybe this is my sign. Maybe this is God calling me to that Bible. So I walked over there and I asked him, I said, hey, can you help read this to me and help me understand what God has to offer me? I was like, maybe I'm tired of the way I'm living. I'm ready to give my life up. He teared up and he said, brother, I'd be more than proud to help you find your way. So me and him, we got into that Bible. We dug deep just so I can find, what's wrong with Trey. What does Trey need to do to convert his life over to Christianity, to give myself to God, to make myself better? Because in the past, I've never really been successful. I've never had anything on my own. All I had was a backpack with 5 pairs of clothes in it. Well, we sit there, we talk, we laugh, we cry, we read the Bible, and we pray. Well, I give it a couple of days, and I keep doing the same thing over and over again. I wake up, I pray, I read my Bible, I go to class, I learn what I'm supposed to learn while I'm in treatment to make myself a better person. Well, that's when the devil came after me, because I'm giving myself back over to God. The devil wants me even more. Every other day after that, I'm getting bad news upon bad news upon bad news, and everybody would tell me that's okay. That's just the devil coming back after you. He wants to see you fail. God wants to see you succeed. God only puts battles in front of you, knowing that you can overcome them to make you a better person. So with those words, I took them very strongly, and I went and prayed about it. And I keep living every day like it's my best day. And all I got to do is keep praying and put God first. Well, I remember me and my cousin, we would sit in rehab, and, we would just talk what we're going to do when we get out of treatment. Well, me and him had this plan. We visualized everything. We prayed about it. We wanted it to happen. So we sit there and we talked, hey, we're going to go to this program after treatment. We're going to complete this, and we're going to get a place of our own. Well, life works in glorious ways, and God has blessed us with a place of our own, and we're still here today. I have about 13 months clean today from any and all mind-altering substances. And, I have people ask me all the time when I'm working at the treatment center. They ask me, hey, how do you do it? And I'm like, man, honestly, it's God first. Without God, you can't get nowhere. And second to most, mental health. Mental health is super important to my recovery. I don't know about anybody else's, because what worked for me probably isn't going to work for them. But the way I see it with mental health, if you look at it, most of people with mental health issues, we go to drugs to suppress those emotions. When it comes to, ex-military people, they go to drugs and alcohol to suppress those emotions, and that all leads to addiction. And I think mental health is, something that if we got fixed, that addiction probably would never be an issue. So with that, I think that for me, my mental health, me controlling my mental health, getting it under control, me finding God and letting God come into my life has been the number 2 blessings of what has happened to me in the past year and a half. And I couldn't be more grateful for that. When I got out of treatment, I was working for a place making tents for the military, and I liked it for a little bit, but it was the same repetitive thing. There were drugs all around me, and for an addict who just got out of treatment, sometimes that could be really hard. And I did have thoughts of using. I did have a plan of using. I had everything set up. And then one day I got the call from the next chapter, and they asked would I like to be employee and cook for them. And I couldn't be more grateful for that, because for one, I get to be around people and help them that have helped me before. I love to cook, and it's super easy. I won't be around drugs. I'll be around recovery 24/7. and that has helped me tremendously. Uh, I did get it twisted for a little while. I made recovery, I made working in recovery part of my recovery, and I could have failed if I'd kept it that way. But I had to change things a little bit just so I would be safe on my end. I I wake up, and when I wake up in the morning, I pray to God to lead me upon His direction, come into my head before I enter my head, because I make the worst decisions for my life. Without Him, I wouldn't get that far in life. I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Uh, I really think that if it wasn't for the place I'm at now, the people who have helped me along the way, that I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. We wouldn't have this interview. I've never really been more grateful than I am today. I do keep my uh, brothers still around me. I have very close connections with them. We go to meetings almost twice a week, always once a week. That's our go-to. We hang out, play video games almost every single day. Like, it's the little things in life that really bring the best out in us, and sometimes we're not appreciative of it. I go to work, I come home, play video games, I pray, I read the Bible. That's the best simple life a man could live. And sometimes we take it for granted because we want something different. Sometimes change can be scary, but sometimes it's the best thing we need to make ourselves be comfortable, be sufficient. And I really think that my life couldn't be any more perfect than what it is right now. To be able to help others, lead them in the right path, and get them further than what I've came in life. Uh, Although I'm a cook at the rehab center, I would like to further my education. I want to be a drug and alcohol counselor because, I think with my experience when it comes to knowledge, and, I've been there before. I really think that's what, people need in life. They need somebody that has, both ends of the experience and the knowledge on it. I never really did good when it comes to people telling me what to do when it comes to recovery. That's never, battled addiction, because what can one person tell me that they haven't experienced? What can they tell me to do that's going to help me that they haven't experienced? So I really think that's, my best bet. And sometimes I get that thought in my head that, like, oh, bro, you're almost 30 years old. Why would you go to school? It's, you're too old for that. But, God's given me a new life every single day. I don't count years. I don't count weeks. I count 24 hours in the day. And that's what I'm given. So I got to use every hour of that day to make it better. So I'm thinking about here probably the next year I'm going to further my education, get everything I need to get done so I can help others the legitimate way. I don't want to do it for the money. I want to do it for the satisfaction that, someone's helped me, and with the knowledge they give me, I can give to other people. And I think that's, what recovery is all about. So I was, when I was a kid, I wouldn't necessarily say I was forced to go to church, but I was, recommended to go to church. So I went to church. Then later on in my teen life, I kind of fell out of that lifestyle. I fell out of that habit. The people I hung around with were not really the best. They didn't go to church. They didn't say they really believed in God. And God just kind of fell out of my life. And, during addiction, I'd always sit there and I think, man, why is this happening? Like, I create everything I do. Everything I do, I'm doing on my own. So I started, studying into religions. And when I studied into religions, I found Satanism was, basically what I was practicing. I am my own master. I am my own God. So I got into that really bad. And for years and years and years, I would always praise Satanism. I would make it seem like it was the best thing in the world because you're your own person. You're your own individual. You have your own, creativity. You can make this happen if you want to. You can make this happen. Well, little did I know that was just a failure for me. I'd say from about age 13 to 28 is when Satanism took a huge toll in my life. And never done nothing too crazy. But once, I started realizing that, that's not the life for me. I had to change everything and change it fast. And I sit there and think about it today because you still have people, when I talk about it, they're always like, well, either way, you're still going to hell. And that's not something I would like to think about because in God and in the Bible, God says that if you really know Jesus and you understand Jesus, you put your back against him, that's when you can be unforgiven. But as a young kid, I didn't understand who Christ was. I never understood what God did. So I turned my back on him then. And now that I've read my Bible, I understand why Jesus died for us. And I feel like even in my past, the worst of my worst, God's forgiven me for the things that I've done in life. And for me to carry on his message to others and let them know how much he has changed my life. If it wasn't for, the brothers I've had the past year and God in my life and these prayers, like I would not be here at all. And God has really, blessed me day after day. And some days I don't even see the blessing coming. It's just God working his miracle. And it's really hard to, talk to others about it because they really don't understand what Satanism is when it comes down to it. Because they'll say they worship God and they do this and they do that. And, I think when it really comes down to it, people, your actions speak louder than your words. When I always said I was converting myself over to Jesus, it took me a while to actually, put my footwork in, to start picking that Bible up, to start going to church more often. And that's when God allowed the blessings to come in my life. God isn't going to bless you if you just say you're going to do something. God blesses you when he sees you put in that footwork and he sees you really want it in life. And I try to tell others that's how you get your blessings in life. God really, he wants to see you. He wants you as his soldier. He wants you to pass along his message. He just don't want you to talk about it. He wants you to do it. My best advice when it comes to addicts is, I still have friends and family who still suffer with addiction. They're just truly not ready. I offer, the best advice I can give to them, but, I was once in their shoes and I gave the same excuse. I cussed people out because they wanted me to do better. But, sometimes we have to put our faith in a higher power and we have to realize, hey, is this life we're living now really worth it? Are we really comfortable, having to wake up and steal every single day when, we could actually, focus on ourselves? Because we always, at the end of the day, we want to die being a better person. And addiction just makes you the worst person you can ever be. It really takes a toll on ourselves. And I'm not saying anything with a high ego or anything like that, but once you get in recovery and you start realizing that hey, life's better, you work every single day. It does get tiring, but it's worth it to have the reward at the end of the day, knowing that you didn't have a drug, a drink, or anything like that, and come home, take a shower, go to bed, or play a video game, or do anything like that. That's really the way to live right there. I don't want to have to, wake up every day wondering what's my next move to get my next drug, and my next high, or how I'm going to do this or how I'm going to do that. And I know many addicts suffer with that. Like, it's really hard to, get the willpower to want to change because we're so comfortable with, how we're living, even though it's the wrong way of life. And we're doing, illegal activities just to, get through the day. They're not used to, breaking that chain and being uncomfortable. because that's all it takes is, it might be a week, a couple months of being uncomfortable to actually, be happy in life again. Um, I know I didn't have that happiness in me or that spark and that the enjoyment, fulfillment of life until after, I got in recovery. I started doing the things I needed to do to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And I try my best to talk with other addicts. Um, I go to rallies, I go to meetings, and I try to talk with people about how I changed my life. And yeah, of course, what I did may not work for you, but I can give you the steps that was given to me to help you, live a better life, to have a different lifestyle, a different outlook on life. Because life can be beautiful, but we have to put in that legwork to make it beautiful. And it's not gonna be given to us, but it's not impossible to get it. It's it's a challenge, but it's the best challenge an addict could ever do was get clean. My best advice for any addict that's still in recovery, that has, those moments or days or urges or anything like that to go back out there to start using because, you know, I'm a human as well and we all make mistakes and, I have those moments to where I think about it as well too, but, you know, we have to take a second and breathe and realize how far we came in life. You know, even though materialistic things don't really matter, we have to look around us and see how far we've gotten in life. Like I, I on one hand, I, I've gotten so much in the past year from being in recovery than I've ever had in my whole life. I have a place of my own. I have anything I could want in life. All I gotta do is go get it. I don't have to want in life. Uh, for anybody who, sits there and think at the end of the day, maybe this house solve my problems. It's only a temporary fix for a permanent solution. And that permanent solution is going to lead you right back down to, addiction. And it's going to destroy your life again. Because I've had, I've had everything I've had now in addiction. And I've gotten rid of it all because I need to get my next high. Now I have everything in recovery. I get to enjoy it because I don't have to worry about my next highs coming from. I can, come home each day and enjoy my game consoles, my snakes, and anything I have in life. I get to enjoy it because that 24 hours I decided not to pick up. Well, when it comes to people who have not faced addiction in life or, had no abuse, substance abuse issues that, kind of fall on bad times, mental health, could say mental health issue could be, a huge part of it. And that, that could lead to thoughts of, taking drugs. And that can control into addiction. Get out of your, comfort zone. That you're being in your comfort zone is the worst thing you can be in when life starts to take a toll on you. Because that's when you start, having the bad thoughts of, what can I do to make this feeling go away? How can I suppress my emotions? And as an addict, I use drugs. And I don't just use one drug, I use all of them. And for a person that has not faced addiction or had any issues with substances, I think that would be an easy thing for them to do is pick something up. And it's the hardest thing to put down. I feel like God's putting on my heart to tell, all the addicts who are still facing in recovery to not give up hope, even though if you're not ready right now, to focus because He loves you and He wants you to do the right thing. You may not get clean today, you may not get clean tomorrow, it may not be next month, but God's got your back and He's going to help you. You just have to trust in Him, love Him, and believe Him.